we talked about it earlier in terms of separate trading business to generate cash flow, to go alongside lumpy businesses. But one other way of having cash flow isn't necessarily just through a trading business. It can also be through your property investment empire. And as you all know, one of the most common forms of higher cash flowing assets are through HMOs. So what better to have a masterclass from 3 individuals who have built substantial portfolios of HMOs to give you the do's, the don'ts, the ugly and the beautiful. Leverage from them. What's wrong with beautiful?
Nothing, mate.
Good. Get on up here. Jack, Ryan, Stu. You
first? Hello, mate.
All right.
I think Ryan's first.
Thinks Ryan first, is he?
Thank you. You smashed that. Sorry, guys, I'm dying a bit today, so if I'm snivelling and coughing, just try and ignore that.
Stay away.
What I'm going to do is keep mine really simple and straightforward and quick, because we've got Stuart's 87 slide to go through later. So
I can fly through it, mate.
he'll fly through it. You did well on the Bitcoin. Who enjoyed the Bitcoin session?
Woo!
I thought it was great. I thought it was really, really good. So, obviously, I do stuff in the north. These two do stuff in the south. You're basically the same areas, though, aren't you? Like
Oxfordshire,
Yeah,
sorry,
not far.
south.
Yeah.
Would you say you guys adopt a similar model?
Yeah, he's in a slightly worse area.
I didn't go to a private school.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, that's good though. So a slightly
I didn't go to private school.
lower value area in the south, very high value area in the south. I'm in the north, so everything's dirt cheap. So we thought it'd be good to give you ideally quick, contrasted case studies from these different areas. That's the plan. So I'm going to show you one at a high level. This is 7880 Station Road, Newcastle. 8-bed HMO. It's a ground floor shop and uppers. Nice girthy Victorians, which is how we like them.
Love to go.
And it is existing floor
Loves using that
plan.
word.
Pretty straightforward. Now there's a lot I could go into with floor plans, so I've done so many. What I would say is important as a little caveat, if you are going to get into HMOs or dense use classes, learn how to use a design software. SketchUp Pro is a really good design software. 200 quid a year. I taught where are my little brothers? My little brothers in here. There they are at the back. My little brothers, 18 years old, from the age of 16, I taught them SketchUp Pro, and they were actually doing all the regs plans for this guy in construction. Yes, we still got them signed off and approved by an architect, but all the legwork was done by them, and there's just no excuse. I know younger people can be slightly better with tech, but anyone can learn SketchUp Pro. And if you do, you can identify much better use cases for such things like HMOs, scales to apartments and things like that as well. So existing floor plan, pretty straightforward. We did the little sort of dog leg halfway through the building because we had the depth. I like doing that when you're trying to do a dense scheme because, long story short, you just end up with like quirky room layouts when you try and turn it up the existing stairs. So you can cut straight through across on the first floor and then load your loft up on that side. It's a good bit of advice that because we've done every permutation possible of a HMO. I should probably caveat as well, we do, how many HMOs have we done? A lot. We've done a lot. We've done a lot of HMOs. We've dealt with almost every building profile, everything you possibly think of. And there are a few optimal designs, particularly for en-suites. Get your en-suites right. We use stack them on top, get your wastes right. But there's 3 permutations of en-suites designs. And there's a threat me bit one, which is like a corner suite, where you can keep the flow of the room nice when you've got a dense room. And there's the 1 by 2.4 metre that goes that way, and then there's a 1.2 by maximum, I think it's 2.2 that goes the other way. Once you've got those 3 designs, it's much easier to quickly assess a layout. I do it on PowerPoint sometimes, just to quickly see if a building's viable. There's a floor plan. Here's the room areas. This is from the valuation report. So room areas there, all really generous sizes. That's what we want for. We want at least a minimum net internal square meterage of 9 meters for a bedroom. That's excluding the ensuite. And if we hit that as a minimum, we know we'll get top value rents and we know we'll fit all of our furniture designs in there as well. These all greatly exceed that. And then we got a 417 valuation on this one from the valuer, who I've actually become really pally with, and the guy just calls me up nowadays. But that wasn't the case for a long time. We were just floating around in the market, found a good valuer, he dropped out, and then we struggled to find another good valuer because they'll come in. I'm not sure. Are you guys going to do a talk on valuers with HMOs?
Commercial bit.
You are? Okay, just quick caveat. If you're going to do HMOs, getting a good valuer, someone who understands what a HMO is essential. Because otherwise you get loads of valuers who come in who are used to doing square foot valuations, and they won't understand the commercial aspect or lay any weight into the income. So we've only ever found 3 valuers of like 50 that we've used who are actually really good. And most of the time they agree with our consensus because we've used supporting data, we've used rental income, we run a tenancy business so we can see what the OPEX are, things like that. But it's crucial because otherwise you could drop like 20, 30% off your valuation if you use an average person. So don't be disheartened if you get a bad value on the back end of HMO, budget to do a second one and try and get a referral from a local developer, from Panel, from your broker, to make sure you get someone who understands HMOs. So 417.
I think we've got a question at the back. Hang on.
Hello.
Hey, it's Steph from Willow Isle. I thought it'd just be helpful to do 2 secs on the valuation for HMOs if you wanted me to.
I think we'll
Yeah.
Should we do that at the end once we've had
Do it,
stews? Because we might cover old ground.
Yeah, definitely. No, it'd be good to hear it from the horse's mouth. Me and Steph have gone backwards and forwards on a lot of bad valuations, and Steph helped me get out of them. So definitely. And spec, we standardise for everything because we're doing a high volume of HMOs. We could be on site with 26 HMOs at the moment. We need to make sure we standardise spec. That helps with procurement, supply chain. It helps with the big thing, maintenance long term. If you've got all kinds of quirky variations, and you might feel good imbuing your design onto a building. Tenant doesn't give a shit. They're not going to pay extra value for it. Yes, it may stand out in a marketing photo, but in 3-5 years' time, once it's worn, and now you're replacing expensive product, you can't keep up to date with it. I just don't think it's a good idea. Try and find products that are really cheap and easy to replace, but still look good and still have longevity. And it took us a lot of work to find the right sort of products.
They look better than that now.
They do look better than this now. This is an older one. Here is this is a standard, this is quite a high level feasibility that we run for every HMO to pass it. So you got purchase cost there, 108 grand, all included. That's the disbursements on top of a £101,000 purchase. Great buy, really good buy, this property, because it's right in the middle of Newcastle, next to a metro, happy days. Build costs 180 plus all the extra bits and bobs. You're coming up to 329,000 capex. So that's a total spend, all money required, of £330,000. How does that compare to the south for an 8-bed HMO?
What's the profit we make on one deal?
But as in, compare the capex. Compare the capex.
We'll come on to what we can make down south versus the north for my presentation.
What's the so 330 grand capex? What would be a capex in a typical 8-bed?
Our average purchase price is probably 500.
500, okay. Because this is the main thing. Whilst you maybe have to make more profit, your exposure to risk, your exposure to capital is much lower in the north, which is why we like it. It's a low risk. If we're sweating on a mortgage, it's trivial money to keep on top of. If you sweat in the south and you can't fill rooms, you could be 2-3 grand a month that you're trying to service. So it's basically a balance. And obviously, if you've got less capital and you don't want that exposure, then that's where the northeast can be great. If you want to make the capital chunks and be able to move money further through transactions, then I think the south is better. Obviously, a more competitive market in some ways. Exit there, 417 value, great uplift, blah, 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 blah. Investment summary is the important thing. So we'll leave about £16,000 in this deal. Now, actually, it'll be higher than that for one reason I'll explain to finish on. And equity, net income, £2,000 a month, which would be ideal. And then we've got a rocky rate of return there. Now, since we've done this project, we actually now look at a blended rate of return as well. So that's the high level finish, which we're very much happy with. Now, 2 things on this site. Went for full planning. It was a great project compared to other projects on the market that were going through planning and got refused. Ours was like clearly indistinguishable, clearly distinguishable from theirs, and took one kid in a planning committee he was in like Arsenal shorts in the planning committee. And this kid was just like, I don't think the cordial nature of the tenants will get along well on this project. And he just banged on like that. Everyone else was in support. He started chatting, and then 2 other people started chatting and went, actually, that's the point, there could be more crime in this area because of that. And I'm going, you've got a defunct street of commercial that is dead. You need to convert it to resi. No one's going to be able to afford to do 2 apartments. It will never stack up. So it has to be a HMO. But because of him, the chair then moved it to a vote. And we got rejected. So then we went through appeal. We've won every appeal we've ever gone through because whenever we stack up planning, we're always making sure we've got the end in mind and go, if it goes through the material considerations, we'll get support. And if it falls to appeal, then sure, we're subjected to local democracy, but the inspectorate will come in and should override that. But you've got to buy yourself 9 months of extra borrowing or holding cost time. So we got the full approval. And the last caveat is, because of that, we had an investor in on this deal. We're just going to split it 50-50. And smash it out. And because we got rejected at planning, it actually sort of worked out in our favour. And here's where you can sort of pivot as a developer. And they were like, well, we need the income. Like we're looking forward to this income. So we just pivoted it, took it as fixed rate, novated their equity, and now we own the site 100%, but we're servicing the interest. So the interest maybe will stack up to 15, 20 grand or something. So you could add that on top of the capital employed, but we'll service that through the business. We'll hold a great asset in a great location. I don't mind parking money in a property if it's a great location, like this one is, because over time we'll win on the equity. And that is me.
Want to make?
Over to
Cool. So Ryan talks about basically a case study and spun off some areas, but I wanted to go back to basics a bit, and why a lot of people have a bad connotation to HMOs because of the particular tenant type you might have in a HMO. But going back to basics, I like to look at the sort of macro and the microeconomics behind why HMOs exist. So rents are forever increasing, and that is because borrowing's not as good for buying. How property prices have gone up, which we've already talked about. Therefore, HMOs become more affordable. The average first-time buyer in the UK is 37 years old. So between the age of leaving home with mum and dad to buying their own home, they're renting. So the typical average age, if you look at that as an average, it's a crazy amount of the market. The demographic, if you look at people that live in the residential market, between the age of 18 years old to about 85 years old, this is about 20% of the market are renting, and they need a good product to rent. The cost of living is increasing, so people are becoming more price sensitive about rent. Rent is the biggest cost per person if you're not paying a mortgage, obviously. Landlords leaving the market. Personally owned landlords have been slapped with various different taxations over the last 10 years, and I would be absolutely amazed if there's any individual landlords that own more than 2 assets in their own name within the next 5 years. It just doesn't make sense anymore. So it's positive for SME property people like us, and obviously strong cash flow models. So where we start off and going back to basics, Ryan touched on a point. If your rooms aren't letting, how do you sort of caveat that problem? Before we do any work of doing any HMO stuff, we pick a location. That's really, really important. We like operating in locations that we can touch, see, we know the areas, we understand the areas. Ryan actually relocated to the north. I stay in my comfortable house where I live, and we just do it locally around us, which is one of the reasons that we do it locally. Within that research, we picked various different locations that we operate in. We like sub-towns and secondary towns, so towns that are between 20,000 population and 100,000 population. I don't like doing the bloodbath fight in larger locations. I live really near Reading. If you go to Reading to be a HMO landlord, you're already entering a mature market and you're fighting the fight that everyone's fighting. I typically go to areas where there's no established professional landlords doing HMOs, and I take the most of the market. The reason we do that is void rates are pretty much not a problem, and we're providing a service into a market that's new. There is an element of risk with that, but we've actually been really well received in the areas we look at. So to do this analysis, we typically use property data and or Google. We basically pull together loads of data. So the average asking price for a 3-bedroom house, the average pound per square foot, the sold pound per square foot, the average rent, ensuite room rates, double room rates, single room rates, the rental income on the rent, if you were to rent a 3-bedroom house, which is really good if you're doing rent to rent. Not a massive fan of rent to rents, but that's a good model for that. So it shows your yield on rent. So your room rent on the pound per square foot that you're paying, it shows your yield, your yield in that particular area. Turnover of sales, average growth, and this is the most important one. So rooms wanted per capita, so that's how many spare rooms are required per capita per population. So you can see your ratio of youth in that area that will be renting. Our typical tenant is between 20 and 40 years old. You can also then look at spare rooms wanted versus spare rooms rated vacant, which gives you your ratio. So that's your saturation ratio. One of the biggest problems in HMO landlord ownership now is if you're going to an area and then you start pricing based on everyone else in the market. If you're going to a blue water area, you choose your price point because you're offering a new service. If you go to the Reading, you're pricing it the same as everyone else minus a little bit, and you're on this fight to the bottom, and that is not the market that we want to be in our business. So before we go into any location, we look at location analysis. So around Oxfordshire, there's locations that don't work for us, like Swindon is just bordering Oxfordshire, for an example. I think it's like one of the bottom ones here, but for every 4 people, for every one person looking for a room, there's 4 available rooms. So there's 4 landlords that are worrying about their P&L to try and fill that room, and there's only 1 tenant. In areas we operate in, you can see these top areas are 4%, 5%. Even if you get to 10%, that means for every 10 people looking for a room, there's 1 available. Supply and demand metrics in any business model. So we do this research before we go to any location. Obviously, we take the power off the burners when we start to actually, one of our locations was at 2%. We've been the reason it's got to 50% coverage. And then we start slowing out and not delivering more in that particular location and do more in another location. I thought I'd talk about the positives and negatives north and south. Capital appreciation is typically stronger in the south. A friend of mine bought a house 18 years ago and it's worth the same amount as it was when he bought it. Obviously, the cash flow is better. The yield typically is better in the north. I actually don't focus on yield at all. That is not a metric I care about because it doesn't tell me return on cash or return on time. They're 2 things that I really care about. The yield can be whatever it wants, but I care about what the return is on my cash and what the return is on our time as a business, which is relative to north or south. You know, that's a metric you should take internally.
Tracking IRR.
Yeah. Sui generis planning for commercial. Obviously, in the north, typically you want a commercial valuation. Therefore, you have planning risk in some instances, which Article 4 comes into play. We typically do 6 beds in the south, and we don't have to completely explore sui generis planning. And that is because a lot of our bricks and mortar valuations are greater than a commercial valuation anyway, because we're in the south and we're in high capital value areas. Cash flow in the north is obviously stronger. Negative equity risk cost in the north. So I have a bit of a sort of overarching theory. If you're valuing a building on rents and then you're building in an area and rents are really strong and then it does become saturated, all the rents drop. So technically the valuation of the building should also drop, but it hasn't because you now need to redeem a mortgage because you're at the end of a 5-year fixed or at the end of a 10-year product and you're refinancing a property that's not worth what it once was. So you're taking market saturation risk on an asset, which in property world we don't want to take because we're property people and we like bricks and mortar.
It's a commercial debt bubble, isn't it? That could happen.
And then also expensive versus inexpensive. Ryan obviously mentioned if you're buying one house where I'm located, you might be able to buy 5 up north. So that might promote. So for me, it's all about set your goals, set your strategy. If it's cash flow, you may build the north into that process. Or if it's a longer term play, the south might work better. I like making money in my backyard, and I'd rather not travel. But Ryan sort of negated that by just moving. When you're buying, this is a really, really top tip. If you're not doing this, you will not buy as many HMOs as your competitors. We have an all singing on dancing HMO spreadsheet that looks similar to Ryan's, but various different metrics. If you do not understand what you can pay per bed, build per bed, and revalue per bed, you will not get quicker at acquisitions, and you will not get quicker at building averages across the businesses. Obviously, every project is different, but I know in each area what we can pay per property, so I can literally see it on Rightmove, go and walk around it, just go, I reckon we can get 6 beds out here, 6 times 50, I know my purchase price. Some houses that's really low, some houses that's higher than the purchase price. So you can actually get into a position where you're just quickly running the numbers and drawing averages. The easy way you do that if you haven't bought anything yet is analyse deals, put the purchase price at a value that it works, and that is your average, right? Because you've already analysed the numbers, you know that that's the value it works at. Build cost is the same. We spend about 20k per bed per property on average across, so we've delivered over 150 beds, and that's an average, so it's quite an accurate bit of data for us. Where are you at?
Same.
20?
So I was thinking about what I was going to say.
You fit bidets and everything in yours, so yours is probably higher.
You talking about cost or
dev costs, yeah, per bed.
our internal cost or what we would charge for it?
Give us both.
Our internal cost is
Spill the beans.
it's more. We're a charity, mate.
I'll
it's
cover all mine in
it's
mine.
probably about
I'll cover all mine
17,
in mine.
18 is what.
I think you're
I'm like
worked yours
25.
out. You're about 25k, but you do underfloor heating, bidets,
Yeah.
It's all
Sky TV,
covered in mine. All covered
Sky
in
TV.
In what?
It's all covered in my presentation.
20,
Yeah.
21.
25 grand a bed.
Yeah. So understand that metric. That's really, really important. So you've already got a range on here.
When can you
So this is a lot of rooms that are being delivered. I think he's got something like 1,000 being delivered today. 20k a bed is a pretty good average that you can put into your spreadsheets just to sound check that. And then GDV value, if you don't understand that. So it just gives you a really quick marker. Like in the commercial conversion, I said pound square foot in, pound square foot build, pound square foot out. Same principle, you're just dialing down to make sure it's more accurate. Important information for us, this is a segment of a much larger spreadsheet, but the important metrics that we look at, I mentioned it before, is we only really care about return on cash left in and return on equity. There are only two metrics that we care about. And that is because if I've borrowed money to have the cash left in, so this is factored in all the costs of the development and I've now refinanced it. It's also factored in paying an investor a coupon if I end up bringing an investor. So this is like my subtotal cost at the end. If the return on the cash left in is 80%, I could easily sustain paying an investor 10%, 12% on that capital. If the return on equity is 18%, that warrants me to hold that asset. If it's 6%, I would personally sell that because I could get a better return, as you can see from here, with having the cash in my back pocket, which is 180k, which is equity, which could be cash if I sold it, than leaving it in this particular asset. So my threshold is 20% minimum return on cash left in and 10% minimum on return on equity. Is that clear? And then we do have another metric because we do a few smaller HMOs, is we like to see a minimum of 1k net per project. And that just means we're not doing a big project to make, even if it hits these figures because it's an all money out deal, but it's making us 400 quid a month, it's probably not worth the squeeze, that juice, if that makes sense. So that's why we quantify those values. We also stress test the lending market. I don't know if anyone can remember after the mini budget, Rachel Reeves went a bit stir crazy. No, it wasn't Reeves. Liz. It was Liz Truss, the sloth. She attacked us.
I like Liz.
And essentially the rates for a 5-year buy-to-let mortgage went up to 7.8%. So if you're analysing your deal at 4.5%, you want to make sure that you stress test it just in case the market changes by the time you finish delivering or will finish delivering the project. So we stress that. So we've got linear returns. This still returns 1,800 per month at 7% as a mortgage, which is about 2.5 bedrooms. So even if we have a void or two, we're still not underwater. Some top tips of what we would recommend fitting into HMOs. So megaflow tanks so everyone can have a shower at the same time. We fit 20-year LVT flooring pretty much everywhere, ground floor and en suites. A speckled carpet so you can't see stains and they look better for longer. Do Matterport 3D virtual tours of all of your projects. There's an amazing surveying company that's sponsoring today who can do that for you. We fit these heat recovery ventilation systems in all the communal areas to basically extract all the air, take the moisture and the cold air out of the building fabric and recirculate dry, warm air, and that will eradicate mold and damp problems, which is becoming more of a problem with ARAB's law, which came into play. We need to take better care of the conditions of the properties. Obviously, if you've got 6 bed, 6 bath, or in Ryan's case, 76 beds and 76 bedrooms in one building, you need to make sure you're caring for the air in the building. Always fit Worcester Bosch. They're the best quality boiler. I'm not sure if Lawson supply those, but they should. We fit this heating management system in our buildings, which enables us to remotely manage heating, and we can also monitor the moisture in the building as sensors throughout the building as well. And then fit PIR sensors in all the communal areas, because when someone's walking through a hallway, if they turn the light on and then go to work, they won't turn it off. So anywhere that's not their own bedroom, PIR lighting everywhere is how we fit that in. Bit of a case study. So these two, I'm not sure what Stuart's case study is, but Ryan's is obviously a property. We do tons of houses, so 5 and 6 beds is like our bread and butter. But I wanted to introduce you as a case study is a cluster flat development. This was a scheme that we bought about a year and a half ago. It was an old doctor's surgery. It was being sold by a really good agent. The scope of this site is to basically demolish it, and everyone wanted to build a block of flats. The reason that didn't really work is we're in capital values of £375 exit. So by the time you bought the site and your build's at 250, as I mentioned in the commercial conversions for ground up, maybe even 300, there's no margin in this deal. Even if I got given the building, I wouldn't have been able to make the numbers work to demolish and build a block of flats. So we just decided, actually, let's keep it as it is, benefit from Class MA to convert this building into flats as it is, keeping the existing building fabric. We then spent about 100k unit converting this into cluster flats. So it's 5 apartments, 4 of which are 3-bedroom HMOs. So it's modelling like commercial conversions with HMOs, and it kind of bolsters easy planning, fairly easy delivery, but higher cash flow to retain. If we kept this as 5 flats as AST, single let flat, it wouldn't be worth keeping. We'd probably get a 4 or 5% return. So we bought the building actually for 350k, which is £114 a square foot. I talked about earlier, we buy about £100 a square foot in our areas. The exit value is about 400 a square foot for finished product. 375 is where we came in at because they're quite large flats to adapt it to a cluster flat development. This is all of the sort of phase of Class MA approvals. So we actually went for 4 beds to get the change of use. We then went for external application, as I talked about, full planning application to get external improvements, which was 2 dormers, window changes, bin bike stores, and then we went back in for the 5th flat, and then converting 4 of the 5 apartments to 3-bedroom HMOs. This is roughly what it looks like. You can kind of see here on the right-hand side the split in flats, and it's 2 stories. There's 3 flats on the ground floor and 2 on the first floor.
Did you meet space standards on communal areas for these cluster flats?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Is your room cost included en suite?
So the room cost of 20k a room is for houses. This costs about 100k a flat. So because they're 3 beds, that's actually 33k per room. So this turns into a development appraisal in my opinion. And then what you do is you develop it as you stack it as a development deal, and then you pull that into a second tab, which is your HMO deal analyzer, and just pull the data through so you can see the cash flow model of holding it. This is the befores, which is obviously just a doctor's surgery, and these are the afters. We went actually for a very basic spec because it's fairly low capital value area. And these are numbers. So bought for 350, spend was 416, so we actually came in a bit less than, so probably nearer to about 28k per bed. Total cost is just over £1 million. The GDV is 1.265. This is the red book. I actually believe it's probably worth more like 1.4, 1.5. But this is a bricks and mortar valuation. But if you actually sold this on the open market, probably worth more. 11k gross in rent, 58% return on cash left in. So we obviously look at minimum hurdle of 20%. Gross cash flow is 140k. Net cash flow is 45k. Earlier I talked about our business overheads. That's like 15% of our business overheads from one deal, which was fairly straightforward. And then 14% return on equity. That's it. What a mate.
Stu, just before we start your one, by show of hands, who's done HMOs before?
Who enjoys them?
That's good. Who's not done HMOs but wants to do HMOs?
It's one of our most popular
Everyone's
subjects, so we
hand
thought
should
we'd
be
all have a bit of a shout. I mean, I'm fairly new to property development, honestly. I mean, since COVID, it made me pivot because I had 80 odd guys, and HMOs was the answer for me to get boys and get bums on seats. Plus, the government handing out money left, right, and centre, so it's very easy to take a £250,000 loan within three days and buy something with it. And when no one was buying, that's when I got into HMOs, and I never looked back. And obviously, being around these guys, this deal I'm going to show you involves every lesson I've learned, and it's super exciting. And that's why when I said I don't buy anything in the last 12 months, HMOs don't count. I've got one going through legals. I had an offer accepted this week. So we'll always be doing HMOs now because they are that good. So this was one I bought, and I actually was introduced to it in 2024, and we exchanged in April. So there's a few months there, which I'll go through the timeline in a second. We started and we completed on the site in September, and it took us about a year to do this. So fairly straightforward. It was an old accountancy office, so it was an owner-occupied building. And the ground floor and first floor were, as you can see, rundown offices, owner-occupied for 20 odd years. And on the lower floor, they subletted half the rear out of the basement, as Ross doing an old school survey before we used XP surveys. And it was an old language school, an old Chinese language school. And then you can see the staircase behind him there, which was storage for this accountancy building. So this was Gary, the vendor. It was an off-market opportunity. That was the day we bought. That was the day we bought it. It was great.
Are those Arsenal shorts?
So he's a local guy. I try and stay local like Jack. I don't want to run around. You should be able to make money within 10 miles away you live. And this is a local area near to where I live. In my opinion, HMOs work everywhere. It just depends on what you buy it for and what the demand is. But he was following us on Instagram. A few of my contractors, he used to look after their accounts, so knew of Sky Lofts, and then obviously we bought the sex shop Chinese down the road. He was paying attention to what we were doing, and just called me directly and said, look, we're out, I'm going to retire. Don't really want to go for the rigmarole of selling it. I think you might be interested, come have a look. So he wanted about 450 grand for it originally, and we agreed at 410. But it was a win-win. He wanted to help us out, and he was retiring. He always wanted to get into property, but never did. And so I wanted to be sort of hands-on and a little bit involved. So he offered, I said, look, I can make it work at 410. I wanted to pay quite a bit less. But I said, if you can back me some money. So he agreed to some vendor finance. So this deal sort of has the ingredients of everything I think you should be looking at. And with constant education, you constantly learn. Oh, that's a great idea. Like the cluster flats and what Jack and Ben have done is basically my next strategy is to take what I've learned from this one and really go into it in 2026 doing that. So so now he's retired, he's had his money back, he's now asked me to get involved. And that's what happens with investors is you use your neighbour, your best mate, your cousins, whoever you know who's got money. And after you've done a few deals with them, they start seeing the benefits of you winning and now they want to become equity partners. So quick slides of what we bought. On the left is the existing, on the right, very low risk, very easy and quick. And when we're doing these big developments, they're great to run alongside the big developments because if I need to bleed labour off and put them on here and just keep the balls spinning, keep the plates spinning, then HMOs are great for it because they are low risk. You can see we knocked a few internal walls out, a few easy lightweight stills, but nothing crazy. 2 HMO bedrooms on the ground floor, a shared kitchen, living room, and then upstairs, again, working within the infrastructure of the building, 4 more HMOs, all with en suites. And then down in the basement, the storeroom and 2 rooms at the back, the school, we simply took the steel out, which is on the next slide, and made it into what was under planning, a 1-bed flat with a study. It would be big enough for 4 beds, but the parking is a restriction. So you have to be a bit creative with your planning, get the dwelling approved, and then go from there. So we offered 410. There was 2 conditions. I said to Gary, I said that one is that we need to get planning. It's a change of use. We want to split it from commercial into resi and then into 2 dwellings. And I would like to get the pre-app at least agreed, and he agreed to that. And then the condition is that he would back us 120 grand. So his 410 become 290. That's a lot of real estate to buy for 290 grand in the southeast. He accepted, and we went for it. So we set up a new SPV. I went to some of my old investors who were ready, cash ready, nice and quick, but wanted equity, which is fine. So first HMO I've ever done using someone else's money as a new business partner. We set up a shareholders agreement, very important to make sure you outline all scenarios if you're going into business with someone long term, clear roles and responsibilities, and then make sure he understood his risk of debt. We were 50-50, well, there's 2 investors, but we were 50-50, so they're more than 25%. So PSC and persons of significant control, there is things they need to do like anti-money laundering, they have to sign documents and stuff, and bits and bobs, and then understanding equity risk. So if the market was to drop any further and they have to leave more equity in, or all their equity, that they understood right from the off. Some people get very nervous about saying, well, it's an all money out deal and it can all be very polished on the top, but then actually, as you get into the deal and the market changes, they need to understand that the business model was always to keep it for 5 years and then we'll reevaluate and pull money out later on. So this deal was 50-50, and the investor put in 300 equity and 225,000 in terms of borrowed in terms of debt that we agreed a 10% coupon on, and SW Homes put in the opportunity, the experience, and the delivery, and it works really well. Everyone knows their roles and responsibilities. The timeline was that the offer is accepted. We took a few months just to get the pre-app back from the council, and then we exchanged and waited another 4 months for completion, which is great because all the debt I was borrowing started on at that point. I've not carried 6 months worth of debt getting to a point where we can actually start. The demo started day 1, and then it took us around 10 months. I originally planned for a 6-month build because it was so simple, but it did sit on a bit of a back burner while we were catching up on other jobs, and also these 2 issues here, which is the basement. There was a still here which we had to cut out and had to get an engineer to sort of pre-approve all this. So we had to open, expose it, wait for them to come over. And the basement, it was dry when we bought it. We took out one of these internal walls, which was here. There was some damp underneath the slab, and was like, I'm not going to go and do this and finish it. And then 6 months later, just have the headaches of damp and stuff. So fully tank it, sort it all out. It was worth the delay now. But at the time, it's just get it done, get it finished. And then it takes about a month to refinance, and we got all our money out on this one. And 18 months for the whole process, 12-month delivery, which in terms of my life was very, very quick. Cut examples of some of the rooms, again, like I was saying, we had conversations about this years ago. It's keep it modern, keep it neutral, make it unisex, make sure that everyone is going to, it's go to market and it's going to get let. And that's basically, we use the same colours, the same theme throughout. And we always put these little kitchenettes in as well, which make a big difference to the local market. You can see the prices there. We'll come on to the rents in a sec. Shared kitchen. What's clever in the design was this is actually a light well for the room below in the basement. So we put a small window in the bottom here, and there was another window on the other side just to get light into the bottom. So what does the rent include? Quickly, we always do CCTV, door entry systems, all your council tax, water bills, electric. So when you look at paying £1,000 a month, it's almost like a Netflix subscription for people who are in that environment. Our tenants are, all professionals, late 30s, early 40s. They might be getting divorced. They might be setting up in a different area. This nomad lifestyle that more people are living now. They want somewhere to call home for a year. It's a bit of a social living for them as well. Give them kitchen, living room spaces. fibre internet, a little kitchenette so they can keep their own ketchup, cheese, third time today, cheese and all the rest of it in their own fridge freezers. So they just have that little bit of independence, but live like a subscription-based model. So the development costs, we bought 410, but then obviously minus the vendor loan, which we had to pay later, meant we had to raise less capital up front. Tax and legals and the build costs, I thought would be about 230 because it is so simple. But you can see we went EPCA on it. The investor loan was 10% and then the equity loan. So we're in for about 676. And then we built it and we spent about 90 grand more than what we thought we were going to, but we put air source heat pump, the basement, the steels and all the other bits and bobs we done, which made sense. And we were in for about 780 at the end of this job. So the valuation was done. You can see November this last year, it was valued at 1.21 million with a gross market rent of about 105. So we try and get it completely finished, then get it valued. And it does come down to the broker of your refinancing, who they're going to use and what VAS panel lenders are the right one for this fit. So yeah, 1.21, which meant we could get a 907,000 back out from the mortgage company, because obviously it's encumbered, we own the whole thing. And that 907 was used to pay off all the fees. So we had some arrangement fees and some legal fees. And then we could pay off the vendor his money on the day of completion. The investor got his debt back. Because of the extra 90 grand, I didn't say, Skyloft's put in some money, which is the other benefit of running a service-based business. And most of my followers on Instagram are builders of such, and we'll come on to why I use Lawson's and stuff later, but these are people who are in the game. So if you've got a secondary level of service that you can lean on, I could have easily gone to the market and said, so I need 100 grand, I'll pay you 20%, and it still would have worked. But having Skyloft's there to lean on to sort of pay a lot of these bills, and then at the end pay ourselves back. And we charge a coupon for it as well, with the SPV we do. So the equity...
Sorry, so you, even though it's an internal loan, you will still charge a rate of interest against that capital?
Yeah, it depends on the issue is. On the commercial, on the big developments where we're in contract, effectively on the big SPD developments, then we'll be under contract, so we'll agree a fixed price. But then on the bank, we went over by about, I can't remember, it was 150, 200 grand, which we then paid ourselves back, but we didn't charge ourselves the interest, we just paid our overhead to cover the cost, but we didn't feel like we were all taking a bit of a risk on a slightly bigger project. But on the smaller stuff, it's like, look, we'll do this. It made sense because we got a better valuation than by spending a bit more money or making it into a separate flat downstairs. And then, so we, at the end of it, once we refinanced, we had an equity profit, about 302,000, which was left in on the ownership. And we got a slush fund out of the deal as well for about 87, which is great for the business. So why did we get such a good valuation? It's because we rent it out by the room. Obviously, we're always hitting for like 950 to 1,000. This was the first one I ever done where we did 4 rooms in the basement without en suites and kitchenettes. But the demand, they all went the fastest because people want to live in a new build feel and not have to pay a premium. Again, we'll see how it goes longer term, but the cluster flat idea is to take this model and then rather than having one flat being rented out for 1,100 quid, you can sort of capitalise it and make £2,800 a month for the same real estate. Monthly rent roll, so yeah, that building brings in 9 grand a year, which is about 107, so a couple of grand more than what the Red Book.
A month.
A month, that's a month, yeah, and annual was 107. Minus some letting fees, we deliver a good product, so we were in a good deal with our management company. But we are thinking now we're at almost 100 rooms with another 16 joining us in Q1 that we should get to a point now where we should think about Jack's model and doing it ourselves. Don't want another service-based business, but we'll see how it goes.
You do look like a lettings agent, actually.
Welcome, come and have a look.
I can see
We'll see.
SW Lex, come on inside.
Anyway, 12% OPEX. People go for up to 20%, but if they're building shit and they've got more problems to deal with, I try and build quality, and we obviously build in the fact it's EPCA, so we have spent a bit more to make sure the external walls are done. But ultimately, my own exit when I do decide to leave for Greenland and move out of the UK, that I will sell everything. And if I'm selling everything to a REIT and they want to buy our whole stock, or we'll carve it up and we'll sell them as separate. This won't be sold as a separate dwelling, but if I want to sell the whole lot to a REIT, they're going to be very interested that we've hit pretty much max on the EPC energy, which is if you're going to give them 1,000 beds or however many I finish on, all EPCA, then we should have some people wanting to buy our stock. And our mortgage was 5.65%, so 51 grand. We bring in an annual net of about £46,000 a year, which is great. The investors have had all their money out. They now own half a building, and they get about 23 grand a year in annual profit split, which is great. It does quite a lot of things for me. We gain from the £1.2 million worth of capital appreciation, so that's going up about 5% a year to combat inflation and what the governments do. It also means that the purchasing power of the 907 is being devalued because as they print more money, the debt gets weaker. So that's another win. Is that the 907 grand today sounds like a lot of money, but in 20 years' time, it's going to be like buying a sandwich. So it won't be that expensive.
Cheese sandwich.
Cheese sandwich, yeah. And then the last thing, which is the benefit, is that our tenants are paying all this debt. So I'm in a position where I'm maximising my debt position, but it's being paid by someone else, and obviously giving them in return a lovely place to stay for however long they want to stay, and it is like a magic trick. So why I love this deal so much, it's got everything. It's got direct to vendor, it's a delay completion, it's got vendor financing, it's got equity investment, so I didn't put any money in initially, and I could have raised the money if I needed to. It's got no bank funding. I do like bank funding, but on bigger jobs, it's quite cumbersome and it takes a long time and a lot of energy. Unless you've got a good broker who does a lot for you. Stefan does a very good job. Emily, I don't know if Emily's in the room as well. She's there. Hello. Emily's also a very good broker. She helped us with the refi of the bank. Definitely worth just getting to know the room. Commercial property, it's better than residential. There's definitely a better entry point, and you can just build in a better return if you know what you're doing. 10 lettable rooms, so there's less risk compared to just one person paying full of rent, so much better than single buy-to-lets in my opinion. And we got a commercial valuation achieved as well, because it's that type of building in which I think a commercial valuation for me is as long as you've got more than 3 en suites in a building, it's generally considered a commercial val. And if you've got experience, a new lender won't take you on if you've got one, so you have to bear in mind you might be able to get a hybrid, but having 2 or more, people will start taking you more seriously. And then all money out, so basically a free building, which as you can imagine, with my half of the building, there's only one thing I'm going to buy with it. I'm going to be buying more Bitcoin, fill the truck, and then I'm winning on both sides of the coin. So that is pretty much it. Quick 2 thank yous while it was my last time on stage on my own. Delivery partner Lawson's. I've all done this because I've got a great service-based business, which is Sky Lofts, and we do 80 odd lofts a year. Lawson's been with me from the start, known for 25 years. As a company, it's evolved over the last 20 years, and they've got 25 of these. So any delivery or anything we're trying to do, these lorries, they go from, I think they're from Midlands. I think is it Midlands? Where's Lawson's? Mr. Lawson, are you from Milton Keynes down? Are you now? Yeah, so pretty much from the Midlands down to the South Coast, these guys will deliver. Fantastic company. You get a 1-to-1 relationship manager, and they've agreed that anyone that sets up an account, you get the same rates as what I pay. So good for you. And property branding. Obviously, SW Homes was literally set up as a side hustle for me to buy 1 or 2 properties. I never knew it was going to get to this. Property branding are excellent, and they just basically got us onto the stage, and then have helped all of our businesses, I think. So definitely worth speaking to Ollie as well if you're going to try and go seriously into this and just build that whole impression to make sure that this is all about trying to get your network exposure, get investors, people on board. And we love catching up and meeting other like-minded people, which is difficult in this industry because if you go to these networking events, 99% of the room you know more of, and they're all very much leisure purchasers and like the idea but don't want to. You guys have paid considerable amounts of money to be with us today, and everyone's go-getters and wants to go out there and do well in the world. So that's pretty much it, guys. HMO, over.
Amazing, Stu. What time are we?
15 minutes.
We've got 15 minutes, yeah. What were we going to do again? We were going to do Q&A now, and then
So we're going to do a HMO specific Q&A now. We have 15 minutes for that. What we've actually decided to do as a little bit of a bonus feature is we had an hour for lunch. But what all the hosts of the Ground Up are going to do is eat lunch fairly quickly and then come back in here within half an hour and do a very informal box session for half an hour. If you want to come in, you can. If you want to network outside and look at all the amazing sponsor stands, you can also too.
any topic as well for that session.
That's any topic. We could be your shrink. We could be whatever you want. But this is specifically HMOs. I've got a question at the front, and then we'll go to that gentleman in the white. You can actually chuck it over.
So when you're doing sui generis HMOs, we're looking at something at the moment that might be sort of 10 to 12 beds. Would you look at doing, obviously you have to have maximum or large size communal space, but would you look at maybe doing like 2 kitchens rather than one
I
large
personally
one
would,
to
yeah.
maximise it,
Go
or minimise the
5
amount of people
5 to a
in
communal
one
if you
given
can.
area?
So we don't really do sui gen that much.
Yeah, I know you said you
we
went to
base
6 beds.
we base because we're in areas which doesn't have Article 4. All of our bids are based on 6, which is prior approval, change of use. So we don't need planning. If we then are buying it on a 6 bed and we can get 7 or 8, we will because there's nothing to lose, but we don't need it. So typically ours are adapted 6 beds as sui gen, so we always only have 1 kitchen because it's basically 2 extra rooms in the loft or 1 on the ground floor or whatever. So we don't. I thought that'd be worthwhile to do.
Yeah, I think.
But what's your average SUI beds? How many?
So we've done a few 10 beds, but mostly 7 and 8 beds.
Yeah.
Try to do 8 to dilutes. As soon as you get into suite gen, you get thermal upgrades and stuff like that. So it makes, from a cost dilution perspective,
Yeah.
fixed.
Yeah.
That is actually a really top tip. If you, how many beds? How many beds is it that goes to
7.
thermal? 7, yeah.
Yeah.
Or
And
if you
increase the
change,
credit,
or if it's a change of use, you can get it. And we had that on like a 6-bedder, didn't we? But just think about it rationally, because this is something that people don't think about when they appraise larger suite gens. They go, "Oh, it's more beds, it's more rent."
Yeah.
Guaranteed, if you don't think about the communal offering and deconcentrating that traffic, you'll have tenants leave.
Yeah.
And what you're really building is 10, say 12 beds worth of costs for something that's going to be 7 beds full, because the others are going to churn. Then you're paying let fees and void rates and other shit.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
I'd split the communal if you can.
Do you want to chuck the box to that gentleman in the white shirt? Nice, great throw.
Throw, mate.
Whoa.
Good throw.
Good
We've got
throw.
insurance for that.
Thanks, gents. Great presentation. You all touched on it slightly, and I think there's potentially some differing opinion between you guys. What's your thoughts on what you touched on, Ryan, like the sort of the commercial valuation bubble and the gap between bricks and mortar and commercial vals? Because in some areas, I imagine where you operate, 200% potentially. Obviously down south, it's probably narrowing to 150%, even 100%, and it's just getting those deals to stack. Because I find at the 200%, yeah, they do, especially with build costs right now. 100%, you know, £1 million HMO next to £1 million house is pretty hard to find.
Yeah, let's explain the issue just for anyone who's maybe not fully aware if you've not done many HMOs before. So when you revalue a HMO, generally 6 beds or more, but I've seen commercial valuations on 4 beds, just saying, but 6 beds or more, you get what's called there's a VP valuation, or a general bricks and mortar valuation, against the bricks and mortar of that asset to local comparables on that street. In the north, let's say that's 150 grand. So if you were just to sell it to an end user, typically, ignoring the HMO aspect, is 150 grand. On a commercial yield valuation in the north, you could get 300 grand for that asset. So you've got 150 grand delta, which is what I was referring to as the commercial debt bubble that's kind of looming in the north. It's not that that full delta will be the issue, but a percentage of it will, potentially 20%, potentially 40%, like Jack said. So then you've got to kind of put your macro lens on for a sec and go, well, what do I think's going to happen? Because at the end of the day, in these northern areas, you simply need the commercial valuation if you want to be able to move capital. So you kind of are pigeonholed into having to do that, unless you just got tons of cash, like Stu, and you park all your cash everywhere. But you, sorry Stu.
Don't have any cash. It's all Bitcoin.
Bitcoin cash. But you, if you're leveraging, then as Jack was saying, in 5 years' time, you might have been leveraged at 75 on a 300 grand asset. And if that market stays stagnant and then saturates on the HMO rentals, well, you got a 150 grand VP valuation. You may get slightly higher. You may get 250. 75% of 250 is obviously significantly less than whatever 75% of 300 grand is, and that's your risk. But the macro lens I put on is rents are only going up. They're only going to print more money, which is just going to hit the proxy pound, and proxy pound goes down, and then asset prices go up. Banks ultimately want to lend money, so maybe they'd lend slightly less, and you might have to fork out a bit of cash to park the equity. But my long view is a bit more bullish on what I think will happen. But if you are saturating an area, and we've done that in quite a few areas, then it's important to pivot that area, because you're only doubling down on something that you know is going to happen. So it's better to know what Jack presented. What do you call that sheet? Like market analysis?
Location analysis.
Location analysis. Like use that kind of sheet, that kind of data insights to know where you should stop in an area. But in the south, you guys don't have this issue.
Yeah, so out of your whole portfolio, what percentage is commercial valuations?
On HMOs?
All of it.
On HMOs, there's probably a couple 5 beds where they're bricks and mortar, but I'd say almost all of them are commercial valuations.
Yeah, so I think that there's yeah, so
The Rocky's really good.
yeah. So I think there's many ways that you look at it. If you're splitting your portfolio, I think the cash flow on commercial value is great, because you're getting so much cash out to then reinvest it, and that compounding value is really strong. But I think if you're always refinancing to the bone and then reinvesting that capital into more you're exaggerating that problem, right? By taking out one, doing another, and then compounding that value, you're increasing the problem. If if you take that capital and maybe split the product, so you do some bricks and mortar, some commercial, or different, these guys do buy-to-lets and commercial conversions. So if they do start to see that commercial vals start coming down, it's not going to break their business model because it's probably less than a third of their output. Also, I think that commercial valuations are fine if you're doing longer leases. So we have a social housing portfolio, 10-year full repairing leases. That's less risk because the rent's locked for 10 years. Also, the rent's locked to local housing allowance rates, which are actually pegged to a 30th percentile of local rents. But that's local rents in general. That's not local rents in HMOs. So what the market is doing and what the government analysed for local housing allowance is two different things. So I think there's two contexts there where they can be valuable. We actually probably do 1 in 10, 2 in 10 on commercial valuations. We love it. We're like, cash out, let's go again, let's do this, let's do that. We take advantage of that, but the breadth of our portfolio is kind of sustaining that risk, and it's only a small chunk of our risk-taking appetite. And if you've got the cash flow to service doing those and you build size, you could probably bail yourself out of that problem. But and rents should keep going up. The problem I've seen is where it's normally thicker and faster in a particular pocket, where a friend of mine built a portfolio in a pocket near us. He was buying at £200 a square foot, so he had really good commercial valuations, but then he saturated the market himself. So his room rates across the whole board was going down because he needed to rent a new room out. So a tenant that would have paid $750 is now paying $750 for a new one, and his one that's 6 years old is now worth $650. And it was just his portfolio was slowly sort of dwindling down. He diversified into different areas, and that's what I'd recommend. But I do think it's something to be cautious of. And then one last thing before Stu adds his piece is any risk like highly leveraging is dependent on the strategy that you want to focus on. The way I see my HMO portfolio is slower roll legacy building, portfolio building. You can be more aggressive and grow quickly with the capital that you can build from it and divest that into other things. But it all depends on the exit. You can't continuously take quite a risky strategy on for a long period of time because then it becomes more risky, right? So for me, it's about like the end goal. And for me, I don't want the HMO portfolio to be at a large risk. I want that to be let them forget, put the money in there, know it's a high return and can keep growing that. For me, the high cash flow of a HMO is to keep growing that portfolio. One day I'd love to take 1,000 beds down to 500 and convert some of them into buy-to-lets to sort of ease that noise that a HMO portfolio generates when I'm sort of a little bit older and I can benefit from taking a slightly smaller margin, but then I'm not absorbing all the bills of the properties as well, so you get a counter benefit there. But while we're growing, it's great because you're like feeding that steam engine.
I agree with everything you just said. Apart from the debt, I absolutely love debt because, again, I don't want to go on to the big issue with Bitcoin. I'm going to try and stop talking about it. But when you totally understand the thesis of what they do, I want to increase my debt position as much as possible. So commercial rents, fill your boots. I'm just about to refinance. This is, again, I'm not a financial advisor, but I can tell you what I'm doing. Is my first HMO's come around for refinance now since COVID. And I've just had, because the rents have gone up from £2,500 to £4,000 a month for a student HMO. It is no bills. It's exempt from council tax. So I do like student houses, but I don't believe in what they stand for. I don't believe in the universities. I don't think they should exist anymore. So I don't want to expose myself to that market, but they are great HMO owners. Anyway, it's gone up to £4,000 a month, which means I'm going to be able to refi and pull out £112,000 out of that refinance. The interest only is about 2.5. So yeah, I'm losing a little bit of monthly cash flow. I'm replacing that with other developments and adding to the stockpile. But yeah, I'll be using every penny of that to buy more Bitcoin just in one lump and buy it because I'm increasing my debt as big as I can, and I'll be increasing my debt position because I'm almost certain they're going to have to print more money, almost as close to certain as I can be, which means I also am almost certain that Bitcoin's going to reflect the mirror of what the government do. So arbitrage the difference, increase your debt position, and buy Bitcoin.
Up into a weird dream where Bitcoin's back.
It's digital property. My dad said to me, so my dad's having to get into the photos, but he said to me, why are you talking about Bitcoin? I said, because it is the #1 global asset. And we all understand profit. We understand it goes up in value. Anyway.
Any other questions?
That's enough Bitcoin.
We've
got two at the front here.
Just before we do, let me just offer a quick balance to that, because obviously you're operating in the south and there is a robust marketplace. There's a lot of wealthy end users. It's a desirable location. In the north, this commercial asset difference can be double, sometimes more than double the bricks and mortar value. So I do caution on the side of over a 5, 10, 15 year play, try and keep your debt ratio down. So start at 75, and kind of like Jack's saying, when you get to 5 years, even if it's gone up, don't pull out another 75, just stabilise the existing debt position, because then at least you're hedging against what could happen in 10, 15
I heard
years.
a good rule that your leverage should be 100 minus your age.
Yeah, Brandon said that.
Appreciate that.
Well, you should be at 60%
Next question.
leverage in your
Take that one away,
60s.
Next question. Who's anyone else
We've got
a
some at the
question?
front, and there's a guy.
Sorry,
Can
as
we
well.
chuck the box over here and see how good your throwing is? And there's a
Good catch.
My-
To your left after.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you go first.
Yeah, is that right? My question is in regards to scalability. So this last year we did 17 HMO rooms, and we're looking for some top tips really on how to double that or better that. I'll be honest, I still work 2 days in the day job. This year we've finally got a builder we're happy with, 4th builder in. And we're just really, have you got any good top tips for us on how to go from doing sort of 4 HMOs a year to the sort of numbers you guys are working at? Because it seems you're a long, long way ahead of us.
quick question. Have you, this is more, have you ever worked out your hourly rate in your HMO business? If you've got 17 HMOs.
No, HMO rooms, sorry, HMO
okay.
rooms.
So let's say you're making 100 quid per room,
Yeah.
per se,
No.
1,700 per month.
Yeah.
Have you ever worked out your hourly rate in that business? Because I can almost guarantee it'll be 5x what your day job is.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that is something
That's one
definitely
little
this
thing.
year to
Work 2
to
more
get in.
days.
Yeah.
One of the fellas has had his notice in. Who was the guy who had his notice in yesterday? He was like,
James,
that's it.
yeah.
James. Is he in the room? Fair play. I love the commitment anyway. He's just like, yeah, hand the notice in. I'm here. Let's do some business. Like, fair play. You know, commercial manager. I'm ready to do run his own thing.
You obviously cover quite a lot in the presentation about scale.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, one thing I look at is your time is the most valuable thing. I believe in like the HMO business, my time's probably worth at least £150 an hour. And if you're getting paid more than that, cool, take it and divest it and get someone else to do the work. But you really need a forefront leader running that business that could bring the systems, the tools, the processes, the scale, all of that stuff. And those 2 days a week will be more valuable than bringing in an employee because you're the thought leader of it. You're at the front driving the train, in my opinion.
If you've got 7
Maybe
HMOs,
just,
quit the day job immediately. Just do it full time.
I'm trying. I saw the accountant, he seems to think you should diversify.
Forget the accountant. He's not you.
You're getting career advice from your accountant.
Well, a little bit.
I'll give you one thing. I will talk quite a bit about vertical integration, scale, and things like that. I think perspective is the main thing, and that just works for any business if you're going to scale it. The whole, make something that works without you being in it and all that kind of stuff. Our perspective when we built what we were doing, credit to my dad, who's also here somewhere. Dad, appreciate you. So Dad said when we were starting this, because he's worked in the investment world for decades, and he said the only way we can scale this really is its source of capital, and obviously then finding sites, is create the Ford motor car of property investment. So it's like a manufacturing facility where the client can have any colour they want as long as it's black. And the idea there being is we're creating a force function for culture and mentality the whole way down the chain that we're standardising everywhere possible. Because if you don't standardise, and that's not just your specification, that's operations, that's how you're collecting data, the mechanics of all that stuff. You want to imagine it like an assembly line. And the construction delivery is always going to be the hard thing, like we've been through the wars on it. But if you found a good contractor now, great, they're going to have a capacity, probably 2-3 guys. If you're going to keep a subcontractor model, you just need to find another guy if you're going to keep scaling like that, because otherwise you give this guy all your stuff, you put him at the seams, and now all your sites are struggling because it's concentrated. And Jack's figured that out fairly well, haven't you?
You're all building in-house, you've got your own teams.
We pay a contractor on all of ours. What do you believe is your biggest bottleneck on the 17 rooms that you've delivered?
Probably raising investment. We're at about just over £1 million. We're looking to treble that this year. But because we're in the south as well, so like our HMOs are worth sort of 700 grand. There's only so far that £1 million can go over the year. So I think that's our first bottleneck. We've finally got, it was 4 builders later, a builder we're happy with, and he has got about 20 blokes, so we are happy that he could scale, but it's just we're not sure what's the start. I think it's me working, to be honest. It's a stumbling block.
If you asked Dorian, Ryan, myself and Stu how much of our time we spend capital raising, it would probably be close to 40 to 50%. It's just an ongoing job that you need to be doing. And it's difficult in a HMO because it's busy, you're in there, you're building controller on site, then you're getting some media done, and then you're filling the rooms, and then it's on to the next one. So it's difficult to step back and go, how do I focus on that? One thing I would recommend doing is build some digital assets around, not getting him going.
31.
Build some digital assets of what you've created. So show the deals, the journey. You don't have to build a brand, but it does help. It builds easier osmosis of value. You don't have to be in front of people to build their trust. Google brought out a new assessment. Rather than 7 touch points to sale, it's actually 10-4-7. So you need to be 11-4-7. You need to be watched for 11 hours across 7 different platforms with 4 different references of you. And that's the new way of communicating of a sale. So that sales process is your investor coming in. So I'd build a sales process. That sounds really like shiny suits and tacky, but you need a process. So you need to figure out, how do I improve this? One like short hack to get there. Once you've built all of that out and you've got a really slick operation, I mean, property branding could do that for you, to build like an investment raising deck. You could send it to all the investors that you've worked with, all the investors that you've communicated with that you haven't closed investment with, and say, could you please introduce me to 3 people that you think might be interested? And either they'll come back and say, I'm interested, or they'll introduce you to their network of 3 people. And if you keep doing that to the 3 people that they introduce you to, you're building a network of higher, wealthier people of different, we're starting at the bottom and we're trying to get in the pockets of people that have got multi-millions to knock around. They all have friends that have the same structure. So that's a quicker way of doing it, but I think it's a forever growing tree that you need to keep watering and keep nurturing.
Piece of advice on that as well for scaling sales, obviously something we've focused on massively. It's the whole know, like, and trust. And property investment, raising investment capital, is all about trust in this game, because the product speaks for itself. Everyone knows property is good, and albeit you've got some case studies, it's pretty straightforward. How do you scale the trust piece? And that is you selling you, which is not like, here's a HMO I've done, it's really spanky, really nice. Like, there's loads of people doing that, but you being transparent, authentic, showing mistakes, all that kind of stuff, that's what's worked for all 4 of us. And ultimately, it's why everyone's here, because you're trusting that what we're saying is legit and we're not selling you on some bullshit or course.
We to help everyone in the room, we probably have about 12 million across all of our sites, HMOs and businesses invested today, and that will get recycled. But we still have problems finding capital, because you're always getting bigger as well. So the person that did your first deal might not be able to do your 10th and 12th and 13th. So that's why you've got to build a process. But you'll get there. And I would also say, get a mentor rather than an accountant.
Business coach.
Hiya, thank you. One of my questions was, I do HMOs and I've been doing them for a few years now. And what's your experience on Article 4? Did it come into play in your area? How did you pivot? And how did you make it positive?
Can I take this one, because I've had a really, really bad
I've got
experience.
a few bits to say.
Oh, no, don't do that.
So we're delivering currently, this is an ongoing problem, 24 sites under one council jurisdiction. They decided pretty much overnight, we knew they were talking about it, but we thought they'd give us a grace period. They decided, there was no Article 4, they decided on that day, 5th of November, to bring in immediate Article 4 on the basis you only get lawful development upon occupation. So we had 24 sites, millions and millions and millions of pounds of exposed capital, and the council has decided to bring in sweeping Article 4. Of the 49 odd licence holders in that borough, we're like 42 of them. So it felt like a bit of a targeted attack. But obviously how do you respond to that? Maybe
Don't slag them off on your vlog.
Slag them off. Yeah.
We'll show him.
What we had to do is we got lucky that 2 of our own schemes were there, but they were 7-bed and 8-bed, and we needed planning on them anyway. So we had planning, so we were actually fine. But a lot of client sites were 6 beds, and there is no other way to do it than hosting a webinar, which is what I did. Got all the clients on that webinar. I went, guys, shit news. Here's what's happened. Boom, 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 boom. Here's how we have to deal with it. We can risk mitigate on some of those sites that are early in the process, and other ones that are nearly finished, we have to kind of go through with it. Can we run them as serviced accommodation? So we brought in this big provider who works in the region, has loads of data, got them to appraise and do reports on every location. We used that as a mitigating strategy to get out of it. And to say to clients, look, we can run it as SA, it still washes its face, you'll get a lower valuation, etc., etc. So I could go on for ages about the downwind effects of those things. As for getting planning in those areas, I actually don't think it's too difficult to get planning in an Article 4 area if you meet material policy and ultimately it's not already saturated. Unfortunately, HMOs have become a political hot topic, so you'll have rejection by default where there's Article 4. Assume that and make sure that materially you're presenting something that's really good and have a management plan. management plan is like a good tick for the councillors who don't understand HMOs, but you're showing competency for the end user. You're not just going to give it to some agent that's like a black box. You're going, here's our strategic management plan of how we'll manage this building, the bi-weekly cleans, all that kind of stuff, 24-hour support, and that can help bode weight in a committee meeting.
So I'll take this to really, really macro, because hopefully if there's people that have any HMO portfolio or delivery, you might think about where you're operating. I mentioned earlier we do it in smaller towns from 20,000 to 100,000. Not one area that we operate in has Article 4 direction. Article 4 direction is people locally getting pissed off with HMOs, reporting it to the council, and then the council taking their own charge of it to ensure that houses can't be converted under righteous changes of prior approval. So for me, it's like you're already playing, if you're operating in an Article 4 area, you're already operating in an area where people don't like you and where it's so above board and it's been established for a while. So I see that as just like noise and Red Sea. And I like going to the Blue Sea because the benefits are you don't have any problems with planning. If you then go for sui gen, that's a different story. That's full planning anyway. We base all our bidding on 6 beds anyhow. If Article 4 direction comes into play, what Ryan hasn't mentioned is he's lost millions on the 22 sites that he is in planning for. What he hasn't mentioned is it's now almost near impossible for other people to get consent without going through loops and loopholes. So his existing 42 licenses are already more valuable. So what I see is if you're in an area where Article 4 comes into play that you're heavily operating in, and you've got, his issue is he's got so much in pipeline that it really slaps him around the face. And he thought, shit, we've got 22 sites we now need to deal with this with. If he had 2 in delivery and then he diversified across different areas, which he does anyway, so this isn't battering his business plan, it's just that he's grown so much, is if we have a few developments in a certain area, then Article 4 direction comes into play, I'd actually be more comfortable that it's made the rest of our portfolio more valuable. At that point, you consider exit because it won't be more valuable than that point. And that's my view. Like, take a step back. Where do you go rather than you're running into a bar fight rather than just going to a different bar.
Exactly. Just to finish that, in the HMO section, I would avoid unless I had to work in Article 4, then I'd want to know everything about the local geographics and the politics and what's going on and why. And then obviously, it's very geographically important. But I just avoid them like the plague. There's plenty of places out there. And because we're in the HMO section, is it Pivot, this company? These provide all the sofas and all the furniture for HMOs.
Sofas.
These sofas are very, very comfortable, so I don't use them.
I actually found some Bitcoin down this one.
Anyway.
Where's Dee?
Dorian, do you want to come to stage? We're just finishing off this. He's probably playing with his yo-yo. Anyone else seen him play with his yo-yo?
I think he was, mate.
Come on, Forrest.
It's funny.
Just turn it off for a minute.
We were doing a photo shoot and Ryan went, "What's that there?" I went, "It's autism."
I'm normal. Do not.
Yeah, that's the difference.